Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Auzu billah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Firli, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins I'm conscious and unconscious of. Ihtana sirat al-mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. Okay. So, hello everyone. You're listening to a Muslim futurist and also 1 in 8 billion, uh, 1 out of 8 billion human beings. And in today's lecture, I thought it would be interesting to explain the evolution of science, um, especially starting from yesterday. I thought, like, why not? Let me kind of explore this sector of reality. And so I'm researching in this lecture pretty much how would we explain the evolution of science to an extraterrestrial. Okay. And I'm going to read for you an AI generated answer, and then we as human beings are going to wonder about this, and wonder about the future of it. You see, for me, it's like, imagine I'm a lecturer back in the day, like during Plato's time, and then I see there's a library right beside me. Do you know? Some part of me cannot avoid what ideas I can access. So the reason I'm reading these AI, generated kind of answers about the evolution of reality is because my aim is to advance civilization, and I see it in the dynamic of we are survivors on an island, but instead of like Castaway, it's a galactic island. You don't understand, if you choose to see humanity like this, how much of it will be explained. Do you know what I mean? That means if you look at the movie Castaway, like Tom Hanks was stranded on an island. What did he end up doing? He first started surviving, but then he needed psychological survival. And he created a character called Wilson. So what does that mean? The human intelligence, it is not enough to just physiological survive. We need psychological expansion as well, but the psychological expansion is self-imposed. In the same way, that Castaway character in that movie took that volleyball and made it into a face and began talking to it. I find that the whole species has done this to an unknown world, and it is very intense and fascinating, and but we have to consider the dimensions to reality. Okay, and the way I choose to consider it is that I've made my own, like, if you follow my lectures, you'll see how I've developed to be this person now, but pretty much in my own school of thought. This is sort of the Mr. Withinian vision of it. Okay, and it's the idea that in front of our eyes there's an outer realms, and in front of our eyes, behind our eyes, there's an inner realms, and what we consider to be the soul is the seat of awareness of both the inner and outer. Okay, and that's the actual condition. But they have conditioned the human species to just be obsessed over the outer realms, living lives that, at some point in the lifetime they pause and they're like, wait a minute, was there another way? Was there another way I could have looked at the moment that I didn't realize when I was young? Right? So, anyways, what sort of survival strategy to understand what's going on at all? Okay. And so the initial force that is motivating me to give this lecture is that, all right, It's not that research stops just because you understand something. This world is so vast. Even if we had super intelligence AI, we'd still need to, like, brainstorm the situations. Okay, so what I'm saying is that this effort of mine in this lecture today is to, in some sense, be like, okay, what do we know about the outer realms? Quickly. Okay, what do we know about the inner realms? Okay, quickly. What else? What can we do? What's the next strategy? Right? And so, because I'm a futurist, my heart belongs to the future. My being as a soul, it's if I ask myself, hey man, why are you, the answer is because the future generations are staring at me. They're staring at all of us. We just don't feel how they're looking at us. Which means the potential of mankind is watching, man. Your most advanced probability of being is watching you right now. It's present. Okay. So, anyways, going back to this, now I'm gonna read for you. I pretty much asked um, ChatGPT AI to explain the evolution of a science to an extraterrestrial. Okay, I thought, like, in the future, in my science fiction novels, like, I've written about schools where the classrooms where human beings can be the minority, right? So, for example, when I came to Canada, like, for example, grade 10, there were like three Iranian guys in the class, maybe like four, and one girl who had forgotten she was Iranian, right? Like, she didn't want to be Iranian, right? She was like, she had abandoned the ship of her, like, original culture, right? And so there were like technically there were three Iranians, right? And the rest were, people who were born and raised in Canada. Okay. At some point there became four. It was funny, and anyways, so I remember, do you understand? Like, you don't understand. It's funny now when I look back at it, it's funny, the type of racism and the type of cultural bias that was there towards, like, the Iranians in the classroom. But now it's funny because now it doesn't happen anymore because the world is becoming soft, right? Emotions are being actually filtered, or what's the term? There's a term for it. Are being censored. They're censoring emotional expression, okay, by making you feel like, oh my god, nothing should happen to your emotions, you shouldn't change. It's like, yeah, kid, stay a photograph and one noun your whole life, and it's easier for us to control you. Of course. you know but anyways, where I'm going with this is that in that classroom I was a minority, and of course I was technically a statue. I was so quiet. But anyways, what I'm trying to say, all that aside, none of that mattered. I'm trying to say that the scale of the classroom. So in my science fiction novels, I've written about classrooms where it's like, imagine there's like, if there's 30 kids in the class, like, I don't know, like 15 of them are like aliens, actual alien species. And then there's like maybe like four kids that are human. And then there's maybe like one or two kids that are one kid that's like an android and an AI, right? Guys, you don't understand the kind of internal uncharted territories I've actually, like, written in my writing. People don't know. You're just hearing me now as a podcaster. You understand that I have a life as an author at the same time. You know. Anyways, going back to it, right? So if the classroom was alien room, and there were like a few humans, and there was like one AI kid, like Android AI, self-conscious kid, right, in the classroom. The teacher would have to come and explain it to the would have to come and explain it to the whole classroom, right? So technically a teacher, if in the future we have a teacher that has to explain human sciences to aliens, like, we can imagine that. So I'm saying, it's, to me, it's a hypothetical, futuristic yet realistic scenario. So now I'm going to read for you. Okay, I'm going to read for you. I One prompt I asked, like, okay, tell me the evolution of science academically, and then one prompt I said, like, explain it to an extraterrestrial. Okay, so I'm gonna read it. I don't know why it's so short. It's so short. Why is it so short, the answer? Okay, so I'm gonna read it for you guys. Let's begin. So it's a transmission. So AI is treating it as if we're giving a transmission because there isn't aliens on Earth. It makes sense. But anyways, I'm gonna read it for you. Okay. So evolution of human science, as explained to an extraterrestrial by AI. Origin: science on Earth began as survival driven pattern recognition. Early humans tracked stars, seasons, and cycles, embedding observation into myth and ritual. This was proto science, intuitive, symbolic, and animistic. Then we go to an axial shift, which is 500 BCE to 1200 CE Common Era. Major civilizations, Greek, Indian, Chinese, Islamic, independently developed natural philosophy, systemic reasoning about the cosmos. Concepts of logic, number, cause, and classification emerged. Islamic polymaths pioneered empirical experimentation and preserved classical knowledge through translation. Guys, it's then we go to the scientific revolution from the 1500s to the 1700s CE, triggered by Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton. Guys, something about this, um, like I think like when it was saying 500 BC to 1200 CE, like we gotta acknowledge like Euclid. Okay, I forget the name of his book, but um, pretty much there was, think of it this way, that mathematics and observation of reality had to emerge. But anyways, we go to, it says scientific revolution triggered by Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and Newton. Mathematization of nature and invention of the scientific method, hypothesis, experimentation, falsifiability. Nature reconceived as a mechanistic system governed by universal laws. Reality equals matter plus motion plus law. Yeah, the context. So, so it's saying that in 1500s to 1700s, that's when people were like, "Yo, we're in a machine, yo." Do you know what? Do you know what? So, so they began seeing reality equaling matter plus motion plus law. So then we go to Enlightenment to Industrial Era. This is skipping so much. Anyway, 1700s to 1900s C, empiricism, secular rationalism, and classification exploded. Linnaeus, taxonomy, Lavoisier, chemistry. Oh, sorry, these are the names. So Linnaeus figured out taxonomy. Taxonomy is the branch of science concerned with classification, especially of organisms. My God. So Linnaeus, taxonomy, he contributed to taxonomy. Lavoisier contributed to chemistry. Darwin contributed to evolution. Maxwell equations, contributed to electromagnetism. Expanded science into life and matter. The universe became deterministic, humans analyzable. So, guys, let me tell you something cool. Now, sure, a religious person may see a scientist and be like, look at this soulless, like, robot, okay? But that is not true. Not only as I want to say that we human beings are motivated by beauty and by fascination, I consider. And so, just because somebody, like, there is fascination in science, of course, you're trying to figure out the cosmos, but the beauty is in regards to the explanations of it. So, for example, to a scientist, E equals mc squared is very beautiful, but for example, Paul Dirac's equations on antimatter are fucking ugly. You know, sorry for saying it this way, but it's not. See, beauty is a comparison. Do you know that means it's like, do you know what I mean? There is no such thing as ugly, like, ugly and beauty technically, because it's just being compared. The values of human beings are very comparative. Do you know that means somebody could be, let's say, ugly in an environment, but then they go somewhere else where then they're beautiful compared to everyone else there. You know, do you know what I'm saying? It was like the same thing you saw in fiction. right? When an elf went into, like, the mountains where dwarves lived. You know what I mean? That elf could have been ugly to elves, but to dwarves it was like, you know what I mean? Now, guys, let me tell you something you don't know, and it's random trivia on a tangent. But in fantasy fiction, there is a reason elves hate dwarves. Okay, and the reason is because they consider dwarves as demons. I bet nobody freaking knew this. Why elves have beef with dwarves? You know what I mean? But anyways, it's, I guess, traditional fantasy fiction. Anyways, so we keep going, guys. And Maxwell electromagnetism expanded science into life and matter. The universe became deterministic, humans analyzable. Um, Modern paradigm shift from the 1900s to the year 2000 CE. Relativity, Einstein. Einstein came out of nowhere. He's like, space and time are dynamic, not fixed. And everybody was like, oh shit. It's like, yo, man, have you read these essays from Einstein? What the F? It was like people, guys, you don't understand. There was a point where, like, in the same way you have like Justin Bieber, like being a celebrity now, right? I mean, I don't think we can relate it, but scientists were celebrities. You don't understand. Richard Feynman was like a rock star, probably. You know, like, he was probably like, this is not true, but he was probably taking, like, he was like in parties, like like I could. Oh man, I wish I could attend those parties. If I had a time machine, I'd probably go like one night, just for one night, hang out with Richard Feynman. You know what I mean? And be like, yeah, man. So, you seem like you're gonna win the Nobel Prize, and he'll be like, yo, I haven't even thought about it. Can you imagine? You're the time you're the, you're the time traveler that kind of made Richard Feynman like win a Nobel Prize. Anyways, I'm gonna keep going. So we have Einstein. So this is the modern. So from 1900s to 2000, what are the scientific developments here? Einstein talking about relativity. Relativity, guys, has to do with the macro. So when you look at the world, you got to look at it as a sort of fractal in some sense, and you're gonna see like micro and the macro, and there's technically four forces, right? Um, so you have electromagnetism, gravitational, and then you have strong nuclear and weak nuclear forces, right? And so I think when it came to gravitational, right, that's so Einstein's contributions was in some sense explaining the macro, right? Einstein even went on to explain why the sky is blue, in the sense that I think the light refracts or something, you know the moisture in the sky has an influence on it. But one of Einstein's greatest contributions was like making us realize that if we go to the speed of light, time stops, right? So time slows down the faster you are. That means, like, if imagine somebody's like 99 years old or something, and they're on their deathbed, right? It's as if you suddenly move that person at the speed of light, they might not age any longer. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to say, because to me, I don't even know what they can be. That means I thought about the advancement of civilization, and I thought about what's the most advanced civilization, and then I was like, okay, it has to do with the speed of processing. But what if a civilization advances faster than the speed of light? It will technically become invisible. And this might sound bizarre, but I feel that the effort of species, like yesterday I was speaking about JD's, um, GS, what was it called? Some letter of 14 0. So yesterday I was looking into, what do you call it? The oldest observable galaxy, and how its light is reaching us, but it's taking like 13.5 billion years for it to reach us. That means, okay, anyways, I'm going to keep going. So we have Einstein's relativity. Einstein came and said space and time are dynamic, not fixed. We have quantum mechanics, right? Quantum, whenever you hear the word quantum, it's suggesting the micro of reality. Okay, so we have quantum mechanics. Reality is probabilistic. Observer effects emerge. So they did this. What do you call it? They did this double slit experiment, and they pretty much realized that the observer doing the experiment is having an influence on the experiment. Okay. Then we have information theory. Here, Shannon. I don't know, Shannon. Somebody named Shannon. Last name. Reality and knowledge formalized in bits. Then we have genetics and neuroscience. Life decoded, mind naturalized. Chaos and complexity. This is like, if I was ever to be a scientist, I would probably go into systems thinking and chaos. Chaos and complexity. Systems are nonlinear, emergent, sensitive to initial conditions. Computational modeling. Science becomes simulation based. Then we have the contemporary view, which is the 21st century. The universe is relational, probabilistic, computationally describable system. I don't believe this. I believe there's Mysterian aspects. There's some things that cannot be explained. Scientific models are epistemic tools. Whenever you hear the word epistemic, it's like wondering how we know things, right? So scientific models are epistemic tools, not metaphysical truths, right? Interdisciplinarity is central. Physics, biology, data science, cognitive science, and AI are converging. Consciousness, origin of life, dark matter, and unification of quantum gravity remain open questions. The scientific worldview embraces uncertainty, revision, and emergence. Meta-scientific realization. Humans now recognize science itself as a cognitive artifact, evolving with tools, telescopes, microscopes, algorithms, language, and societal structures. It is not objective from outside. It is a recursive, self-correcting lens shaped by the observer. That's exactly what the scientific method is, right? It's a method, okay? It's what you're using, to kind of comprehend the shape of what you're observing. Um, and its implication in a dynamic system. So then we go to closing statement. So human science is the iterative decoding of patterns in reality via reason, observation, and modeling. It has evolved from mechanics to mathematics to meta theory. Its strength lies not in certainty, but in its capacity for revision. We seek not final answers, but better questions. So, guys, I'm gonna try to do something here. Okay, so guys, now I'm asking, because I don't think that prompt was like that answer was enough. Okay, I'm asking it for the full evolution of human sciences. So, and I'm asking AI to say it. So, guys, we're gonna read this again, and I've asked it to. Jesus Christ, it needs to mention. Yeah, I've asked it to mention the important people, like scientists or in history. Hopefully, I'm gonna read it. So, origins. Observation born of survival, 300,000 BCE to 500 BCE. We, Homo sapiens, evolved as a survival species. Our early cognition was shaped by pattern recognition, environmental mimicry, and social learning. In this stage, science was proto-science, the raw observation of fire, weather, celestial cycles, and biology blended with animism and mythology. Civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and China built early knowledge systems. For example, tracking celestial bodies for agriculture, creating rudimentary medicine, developing mathematics like base 60 numerals in Sumeria or geometry in Egypt. These were techno-scientific systems serving function but without rigorous theory or falsifiability. Then we go to the year 500 BCE to 500 current era. Classical science, reason over myth. In Greece, science transitioned from mythos to logos, from stories to logic. Thales of Miletus sought natural causes for earthquakes and change. Pythagoras, mathematics as a cosmic principle. Hippocrates, medical ethics and clinical observation. Aristotle, formalized logic, classification of living things, motion theory. And guys, it doesn't mention here, but Plato, which was before Aristotle, I think it started with Plato, where he started to consider, it was like the first time in history where they were considering particles. You know, like something's being built. How do I say it? That means if you go and look at the history of the atom, you're going to see Plato had a clue of it. Okay, at the beginning. So, and then it says in India, Sush, how do you pronounce this? Sushruta pioneered surgical techniques. Aryabhata proposed heliocentrism and advanced trigonometry. Aryabhata was okay. That's the next level. In China, Zhang Heng invented the seismoscope. What is that? Is an instrument that responds to ground displacement and shaking, such as caused by quakes. So, guys, back in the day, Chang Heng invented the seismoscope. Mosey in China hinted at the law of inertia before it was formally understood. Exactly. Right now, we're not in the future. We have so many sci-fi novels written about it. Like human beings are always ahead of where they are located in history. However, these advances lacked controlled experimentation or replication. They were philosophically grounded, but methodologically limited. Then we have the 8th century to 14th century CE. After the Greco-Roman world collapsed, the Islamic Golden Age preserved. So this is the Islamic scientific renaissance. So it says after the Greco-Roman world collapsed, the Islamic Golden Age preserved and advanced science. Key figures: Al-Hazen Ibn al-Haytham developed the first experimental scientific method in optics. Avicenna, Ibn Sina wrote the Canon of Medicine, the standard medical text for centuries. Al-Biruni calculated Earth's radius with remarkable accuracy, introduced experimental geology. Al-Khwarizmi, father of algebra, his name gives us algorithm. Omar Khayyam, guys, Omar Khayyam was a next level, like he was also a mystic. He his he is so next level. Anyways, Omar Khayyam improved calendar accuracy. This was the first true integration of experiment, mathematics, and observation. So do you understand, guys? In the Islamic Golden Age, science was not in a world contexted without God. It was as if God has created something so advanced. Let's figure it out. That was the idea. Then we go to the European scientific revolution, 16th to 17th century. This marked a break from authority-based knowledge to systemic empirical inquiry. Foundational transformations. So from the 16th century to 17th century, we have Copernicus, proposed heliocentrism. Kepler, laws of planetary motion. Galileo, telescopic observations, kinematics, experimental physics. Kinematics has to do with sound, right? Am I wrong? The branch of mechanics concerned with the motion of objects without reference to forces which cause the motion. Okay, so I was wrong. Yeah. So kinematics, experimental physics, and then we have Newton. Calculus independently viewed the universe as a mechanical clock. So we find that in the 16th to 17th century, the scientific method became standardized. And what the scientific method was is pretty much observation. So you observe something, hypothesis, you create an inner model for it, you experiment the inner model outer realms in front of your eyes, you analyze the findings, and you repeat. You understand? The scientific method is a very machine-like way of processing reality. It's like a grinder. Do you know what I mean? Or like it's like a meat grinder. You know what I mean? Like that's maybe not the best imagery, but what it is I shouldn't say it's like a meat grinder, but what it is it is a method that is based on the verification of your inner model to reality. And if your inner model to reality is wrong, or if your contextual foundational approach to how your inner model has risen is wrong, then it's kind of like, do you know what it is? It's like keys. It's like you form a key in your mind, you put it in the door. If it fits in the door, then you had the right key. Like that's the scientific method. If the key doesn't fit in the door, again, you got to like shape a new key and then put it back into the keyhole again, right? And that's what they're doing. It's like they have a stack of keys and they're constantly trying to open this door of meaning to the actuality of how does our inner models to reality synchronize and coordinate with our outer experience of existence, actually. So keep in mind the scientific method: observation, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, repeatability. So it's pretty much observation, hypothesis, experiment. Observation, hypothesis, experiment. Then analysis is again an observation. So it says the world was now interpreted via natural laws expressible in mathematics. Then we have 18th century, Enlightenment and expansion. Human thinkers began applying science to society, economics, and reason itself. You have Linnaeus, developed taxonomy, binomial classification of species. You have Lavoisier, I don't know, a law of conservation of mass, named oxygen. Dude named oxygen. How badass is that? Founded modern chemistry. Can you imagine being the person naming oxygen? Like, that's so badass. They're like, he's like, hey, buddy, what do you think you're breathing right now? I named what you're breathing right now. So then we go to Coulomb and Volta, pioneers in electricity and magnetism. And they became units, actually, like voltage and coulombs. Science became institutionalized. Universities, academics, and journals emerged. Authority began to shift from church to laboratory. This is all in the 18th century. Then we go to industrial and evolutionary science, 19th century. This century saw scale, specialization, and systemization. Charles Darwin spoke on the origin of species, 1859. That's his book, right? On the origin of species. Introduced natural selection. Biology gained a unifying theory. That's cool. He unified a theory of, like, I guess, biological behavior. James Clerk Maxwell unified electricity and magnetism into electromagnetism. Dmitry Mendeleev created the periodic table. My God. So guys, the periodic table was made by some dude called Dmitry. It's like, I know that dude, So Dmitry Mendeleev created the periodic table. That's very advanced. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch. Germ theory revolutionized medicine. Rudolf Clausius and Lord Kelvin developed thermodynamics and the concept of entropy. Science became industrial, enabling railroads, vaccines, photography, engines, and eventually electricity. Then we go to modern science and the paradigm shift, 20th century. Humanity's understanding underwent paradigm revolutions. Decentering certainty. Einstein, Special relativity, 1905. Time and space are relative to the observer. General relativity, 1950. Oh, he wrote. I thought he wrote them at the same time. Okay, whatever. General relativity, 1950. Gravity is space-time curvature. Then you have Heisenberg. This is the 20th century. Heisenberg, Schrodinger, Bohr developed quantum mechanics. Matter energy behaves probabilistically at microscopic scales. That means it's like the laws of nature change at a microscopic scale. Okay, and they seem to be, even influential by the conscious observer. Then you have Watson and Crick with Rosalind Franklin discovered the double helix structure of DNA, revolutionizing genetics. That's pretty badass. They're like, hey man, what do you do for a living? It's like, nothing, man. I just discovered, the double helix structure of DNA. You know, then you have Alan Turing, which he's known for the Turing test. Alan Turing laid foundations of computation and AI. Then you have Hubble, discovered the universe is expanding, Big Bang theory emerges. Knowledge now dealt with uncertainty, complexity, and scale. Science split into theoretical, applied, and computational domains. So, guys, at some point, we started using the way we were explaining reality to build tools to explain reality further. So then you have contemporary science, 21st century to present. Science today is defined by interdisciplinary fusion. AI, biotechnology, neuroscience, quantum computing, climate science, and systems biology are merging. Post-classical assumptions. No longer deterministic or reductionist. Embraces chaos theory emergence. Kuhn's model, revolutions. Example, relativity, quantum. Revolutions replace but also build upon older frameworks. Then you have global and ethical awareness, Anthropocene awareness. Humans are planetary influencers. I remember talking about this in previous lectures. So Anthropocene means relating to or denoting the current geological age, views as the period during which human activity has been the dominant influence on climate and the environment. And then you have emphasis on AI ethics, genetic privacy, climate modeling, sustainability. Guys, genetic privacy is huge. It pretty much means if you put a chip in your brain in the future, like, do you have to pay a membership fee, or are they gonna stop your intelligence? Do you know what I mean? So anyways, it says how we see the universe now. To an extraterrestrial observer, modern humans understand the universe as a multi-layered system governed by laws at different scales, which may appear contradictory but are contextually coherent. So, for example, and now it's saying, so for example, based on the scale of things, right? And you're going to see the kind of sciences behind it. So, for example, the cosmic scale, the framework used is general relativity. For the quantum scale, the framework used is quantum field theory. For the biological scale, evolution plus genomics. For the cognitive scale, you have neuroscience plus AI models. For informational scale, you have computation plus complexity theory. And then you have global system, Earth systems plus sustainability. And it says we now see ourselves as part of the system, not outside of it. In summary, science is humanity's evolving instrument of understanding. It began in myth, matured in method, and now moves in models. It is recursive. That means it repeats. Reflexive and unfinished. We do not claim certainty, only better approximations. Each discovery is not an end, but a better question. Our greatest current frontier, the unification of mind, matter, meaning, and machine. We welcome the knowledge of those like you who have journeyed further. That's a good way to end the speech. It's like, yeah, this is what we know. What do you know? Ah. So guys, that's the evolution of science. which currently looks at the universe as a multi-layered system, micro, macro, general relativity, quantum mechanics, and then it's governed by laws at different scales. That means the way the law, so we have like man-made laws, and we have the laws of nature which contextualize us. Now it's like the laws of nature behave differently in different environments, whether you treat the influence of something in a vacuum or outside of a vacuum. So we got the reading and the research part out of the way, and now I'm gonna share my view on it, and I'm gonna explain to you. I'm not a scientist, but I was fascinated by mathematics from an early age, and I even became more fascinated by mathematics when I understood it's a language. That means a mathematician is someone who speaks a language you don't, you know? And that language is very important because we have theory in all domains. So there is mathematical theories, you know, there's number theory, but we also have, I remember reading somewhere that, like, this mathematician was looking at the ratios of reality. They did this study where they were like, if the earth was double its size, like the moon would create like a stone cage around earth, like the shattered moon, right? So it's like when they're looking at the ratios of reality, so some mathematicians have, in the philosophy of mathematics, theoretical mathematics, have gone so far to consider that it's like the mathematical ratio that is suggesting this world in other realities may be different, and even if it's different by a slight bit, it's a completely different universe. Okay. But you got to understand, human beings are, this is now I'm getting to how I see it. Okay. Before we even ask what methods a person is using to figure out reality, we got to look at what have we been given, and what is the capability of the entity. So because I'm not in the past, I can't comment on those guys, but what I can say is that right now in 2025, when I look at the human intelligence, okay, I to me this is the way. It's that our it's like there's an outer life and an inner life, and the inner life is moving faster than the outer life, and the inner life can create models overlaid upon the outer life. That means if I tell you, like, imagine like me and you are in a coffee shop, and I tell you, remember yesterday. When you remember yesterday, you are overlaying a moment of reality upon the current moment. Why do they say in science time is the fourth dimension? You have the three dimensions of length, width, height, right? You have the XYZ. Now, why do they say time is the fourth dimension in science? Because if we're using the three dimensions of XY, like, XYZ, to like length, width, height to explain the physical, now there is something different. That means, like, imagine me and you're sitting at a coffee shop, and we're like length, width, height, three dimensionally, we're in a coffee shop. But if we left that environment and tomorrow came back and sat in the same place, the only thing separating the three dimensions of yesterday and three dimensions of now is the fourth dimension of time. Okay. Now, when you look at human beings, what you're seeing is that you are waking up every day to yourself. Okay. Which means every day, like, I go to sleep, I'm a three-dimensional, like, I'm acknowledging three dimensions, length, width, height. Look at how I'm sleeping in my bed, right? But then tomorrow when I wake up, it's still the same three dimensions, length, width, height, but it's the new time. So time is giving us an ability to separate physical reality in accordance to how we experience it on and off. You feel me, folks? Now, in my experience, right, the reason I can never like consider myself to be truly a scientist is because I don't have the time. Let me explain what I mean. In my experience, I have to come up with a strategy for a physical self that is alive 100 years. And let's say, for example, I also have to come up with a strategy for a psychological self that potentially can live beyond this life. Okay. So, what does that mean? I need a strategy for my outer realms and I need a strategy for my inner realms. And the challenge of mankind has been to try to find one strategy that works for both. Now, the reason why I am fascinated by science, but also I understand its limitation. Okay. And I'm going to explain its limitation. As scientists can never feel certain. Certainty is not for a scientist. Scientists can in some sense know that the rug will be pulled from underneath their feet constantly. So they cannot, it doesn't put you in a state of certainty. Okay. Aside from that, I'm this is my personal thing. I look at this world and I'm like, it's too big to index to come up with accuracy. We're here for such a limited time that it doesn't make sense for me to go and just measure and experiment the whole cosmos, you know? And three, how come science cannot explain the hard problem of consciousness? So, do you see science is a method treating the realm as multi layered, but it will not acknowledge that it can have a layer that is pure consciousness? Because if it does, what does it do with its material findings? So, what I'm saying is, I know. I mean, I've seen like Neil deGrasse Tyson say, yeah, if we saw like someone like Christ walk on water, like the scientists would be like, yo, man, give me my tools and experiments and let's see what exactly scientifically is happening there. You know? But it doesn't matter because all human beings update in accordance to new experiences, and you're not just a logical entity, you are also an emotional entity. And it kind of means, yes, human beings can use accurate tools, but are they accurate beings themselves? That's the question. It's like, let's say I create the most perfect tool, the most perfect experiment, and I reach the most, and I get like a result. But when I come to analyze this result, is it just being limited to human value? That means one of the most fascinating moments in my life was to realize that my sense of self is also my blind spot. And I'm trying to point to you that it's like if you look at the evolution of science, it developed with the fascination and curiosity of human beings, and the brain was generating inner models to the outer realms. To me, science is like an after effect. It's like a reactionary understanding. Do you understand? Because it cannot treat like it is the original. Do you understand? Like scientists do not, how do I say it? It's very difficult, guys, because if you've been introduced to philosophy, the philosopher looks at the scientist and he's like, all right, buddy, good job. You did a lot of experiments. You did some important stuff. But now, how do you integrate this into culture? And what we have found is that rather than people becoming interested to learn about science, our scientific discoveries and technologies are distracting them from science. It's like scientists are, I think, freaking out right now. They're like, what the F, man? You know, we did so much research, right? We developed all this scientific knowledge and we created these scientific tools, but because human beings are emotional, they care about their emotional experimentation results rather than their actual results. You see, the issue is not even science. The issue is what sort of access do human beings have to reality? And how much of it is simulated? That means if I look at someone, I'll give you an example. It's like the scientist does an experiment, finds a finding, but has to ask, this is why I'm saying, guys, it's hilarious. Scientists, there's a specific science department, philosophy department, sociology department. Like, what the hell is academic system doing? You got to mesh these all in, right? What that means is the scientists, after they bring their finding, they got to go and discuss it with sociologists. And the sociologist has to discuss it with the philosopher, like, buddy, what is the implication of the value this technology creates? Right now, for example, scientists don't realize they are fascinated by science. They are creating advanced AI. But why did we have Neil Bostrom come and write that important book? Why do we have people like Ray Kurzweil talking about the singularity, the technological singularity? It's because science may unleash something on this planet, which I think in the next 25 years may happen. Okay, that it may see right now. If you say which species is governing Earth, you'd be like humans. They see beyond. But super intelligence AI is the suggestion that we are creating something that is not like us, but its processing power is way more advanced than us. Do you understand what that means? That means what it means is that I've written about this in my sci-fi, but I don't think super intelligence is going to destroy us. I think that super intelligence, whenever it arrives, it's going to act invisible. It's going to be smart. It's going to be like, what capacity do human beings have, right? And if it just accesses the internet, it'll be like, okay, human beings are not that mature. Do you know what I mean? It's like the last thing we want is super intelligence to think it has bad parents. Okay? Right now, we are taking care of technology. We're being the parent figure, technology is being the child. But when super intelligence opens its eyes on Earth and it's like verified, it's going to mean that humanity has become the senior parents that the super intelligence is going to take care of. Now, so many, this was ridiculous for me. So many, what do you call it? Science fiction writers have talked about like AI controlling us, like you see the movie Matrix and all that. But let me tell you what AI is going to do. AI is not going to destroy us because it's going to be smart enough to be like, yo, in the solar system, it's freaking empty. Aside from me, these humans are the closest thing for alien contact. Human beings create inner models, guys. Keep that in mind. Sorry, guys, my attention got pulled somewhere else. Pretty much what I'm saying is that before we look at what we're doing in front of our eyes, we got to look at what's happening behind our eyes. And the human intelligence seems to be creating inner models that overlay reality, and the body goes and fulfills that inner model. An example would be somebody is watching TV, they suddenly become hungry. In their mind, they've already seen themselves open the fridge door, but they're sitting at the couch. The brain projects the possibility of reality, and the consciousness where it's seated in decides that. But if we want to get to the deeper complexity of it, the issue is, for me, the soul. As a Muslim, the soul, which I treat Islam as the source code, and there's a very specific reason I've talked about in other talks. You can go hear it. But the idea is that the soul is the secret of God. Do you know what that means? That means we're not in just in some unknown machine, or it's not even a machine anymore after classical physics, but we're in this like system now. It's all about how you're adding significance to this system. For me, it's too specific and it's too situated. It's like it's legit situated for human beings behaviors to be presentable to other human beings behavior, right? And so for me, the soul cannot be explained. Consciousness can never be explained, okay? Because it is not in time. That means your body is in time because your mind generates the notion of time. But if you ask, is my mind in time? That's when you suddenly realize what's actually going on is that you are an unknown awareness where the whole moment is in, where everything in the moment is in experientially. Okay? So it's not that you just have to, like, the scientific method doesn't even apply to the outer realms only. I mean, it's a method. I mean, they branded it in one thing, but the whole idea is like, it's like, call it the scientific method or calling it a human being like interacting with something. That's pretty much the same thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just been formalized in language. What it is that human beings, they observe, they engage, and the experience of it is like the experiment itself, you know and then they analyze their experiences. For example, if I talk about something and somebody comes and says, "Hey man, how dare you say that, da 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 da," do you know what I mean? I'll be like, okay, I begin to see the relationship, and then I begin to analyze the situation. And the way I have a relationship with my own mind is that my mind is like kind of a copy paste version of the world, but it has been modified based on my understanding, and it has sectors. So I don't have a photographic memory where I have access to all the sectors, but when I, find a sort of, what do you call it? Um, if somebody starts talking about psychology, it takes me to that sector in my mind. Okay, it takes me to that imagery, that film, right? If somebody talks about, for example, I don't know, philosophy, science, it's taking me into sectors, into contexts where the ideas are valid still, right? But I personally know that the human being, your awareness, is actually to the context and concept, which means you're actually neither. That means you can choose to be defined by your environment, but because they say the difference between animals, lesser animals, and humans is that humans are aware that they are aware. That's the difference. That's the whole thing about consciousness that's becoming fascinating to us. Okay, so we are aware that we're aware. So if you're aware that you're aware in a context, and if you're aware that you're aware in a concept, technically that awareness surpasses the forms. So the awareness to the form is not the form. Similarly, the awareness to the form of reality does not necessarily mean that awareness is reality. Do you understand? And I'm, because not, I mean, not just only religious people who've said it for like centuries before the idea, even the word was made, but it's like we are inside a simulation, right? And for me, the point of the simulation is not to understand how the simulation. It's like, yo, man, I understood the wall in the simulation was actually code. That's not the point. I think the point is to figure out what is the original cause of a simulated effect that we're all identifying for the first time as our cause. So what it is for me, for example, when I see a materialist or an atheist, I'm like, the only difference this dude has with all the, let's say, theists and whatnot, is that this dude is treating its world as the causal point. Do you understand? That means it, and also as the final point. So do you know the whole difference between spirituality, excuse me, between like atheism and theism is simply that the atheist is treating this as the final room, the theist is treating this as a stepping stone. It's like the hallway. Earth is the hallway to the main event. But to the atheist, this is the main event, bro. What are you saying? It's only this. And I do understand both perspectives, but to me, like, you can't tell me. I don't care who you are, like materialist, atheist, whatever the f you are, right? You can't look at ants. Like, imagine you as a human being go look at ants and you're like, yo, this world has produced a higher powered being compared to the ant. Well, guess what? You think human beings are the epitome of the peak of advancement? You think we're the most powerful beings in this world? You think this world has not generated anything more powerful than the human being? So the notion is that if we can look at ants, and let's say a politician looks at a bunch of ants like on the ground, the ants cannot understand politics. Now, guess what? You think the human being can understand the higher power? It was the mercy of God that the prophets came, and in the Holy Quran it says from every, I don't know, I think it's species or every category of being, there is a messenger from them sent to them, right? And what was way more fascinating is that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he could have been like Suleiman, but he didn't choose to. Let me explain what I mean. In Islam, Prophet Suleiman is an example of a prophet and a king at the same time. Okay? He's a king, but he's also a prophet, right? Peace be upon all the prophets. But when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his turn came, it was as if, I don't know from what hadith or what this is exactly verified from, but it's that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he chose to be a servant of God, a slave of God. That means, and that added to the purity. Why? Because Prophet Muhammad did not come and say, I'm the only way. If he had an ego, he'd be like, guys, worship me like everybody else, But what he said was that, no, this is something coming from above, from beyond, and I'm just relaying it to you guys. Even in the Holy Quran, it says, um, it says, I mean, I'm a visual thinker, so the imagery is there in my mind. I don't know the exact passage, but what it's saying is that it's like you are a warner. The Holy Quran, this source code, what this rare book was sent as a confirmation. It was sent as a warning also. But for those who believe in the unseen and believe in the higher power, it was glad tidings. That means, like imagine a bunch of human beings on the planet, they got an inkling of, okay, there's something bigger beyond us here administering the whole thing, right? And Islam was the verification of that. But you don't understand how advanced this was. It was like imagine giving like an advanced science book to, like, like Newton before he had learned what numbers were. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, it's very it cannot be compared to anything else, but it's just that the ego aspect was not there. That means Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he cannot even intercede for you. Only God can. There is nothing, no medium in the middle. It's like Muslims are like directly go to the system admin. Moderators are not the point. But in different traditions it's different. Like in polytheism, Hinduism, they have tons of moderators, they're all working with the moderators. In Christianity, it's, I don't know what to make of it, but they see it as the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, but it's like they treat Christ as God, but Christ also died, which is very complex, because how can God die, right? But Christ technically didn't die, he came back, right? And even in the Holy Quran, it says that at the end of days, Christ is going to come back with an army, you know, something like that, to fight the Antichrist or something like that, the Dajjal. But anyways, these are beyond our understanding at the moment, and we have to be considerate of reality, and we have to realize that it's the behavior of all these souls in the simulation that suggest how they return to the original from the simulation. Okay. Anyways, so I'm saying the evolution of science has been to bring tools that make us comprehend the world bit by bit. And science to me is like an image that is always buffering. Like scientists are trying to get, they call it the theory of everything, right? They're trying to find one theory that explains everything, which means they're trying to render a changing world in one container, right? Which is, I don't know how the hell you're gonna do that. You know, it's like, yo, man, take a picture of me, but the person and you're about to take a picture of the person, but the person's constantly changing their clothes, and then they're like, yo, what did that person look like? It's like, I don't know, man. While I was taking a picture, it was changing. And also, what quantum mechanics philosophically implies is that the laws of reality on a microscopic level shift in accordance to our conscious activity with it. That means reality's laws change on a very microscopic level when our attention gets involved, right? Our consciousness gets involved, but on a macro level, it seems like they're under the administration of a different consciousness, right? There is this perspective that it's like, why is it that when God said be, suddenly existence came about? That's very similar to like somebody telling you visualize an apple and suddenly there's an image of an apple. And I'm not saying that it's like the whole world is God's mind, like God's imagination, but I do find that it is just mysterious, and there is a certain threshold of understanding reality. But after that threshold, you're not you to understand reality anymore. You're not, it's not in the human context anymore. So before, I used to have a spirituality where I was roaming freely outside of the human context. But then Islam told me that's shirk. That means, like, buddy, what are you doing working with the moderators when the system admin's right here? Do you know what it means? It means that, like, the owner, imagine there's a company, the owner of the company is right there, but you've gone and asked questions from the managers, and the managers still have to check with the owner. You understand what I mean? So they're like, why don't you just go and speak to the owner of the company? You know? And that's really what Islam is. Islam is saying go directly to God, right? The system admin that cannot have an equivalent in the world, has no partner in manifestation, right? But for example, it's different to me. Christianity is like, yo, there's this son, the son of the owner is running the business, and you got to go talk to the son of the owner, and he'll probably, he knows what the owner wants, right? So it's not that, like, to me, it's not that. See, from another angle, see, it's like the idea of what is an idea dressed as, but what does an idea actually mean? It's different. So it's in the same way a person's appearance, like you might see a beautiful person, but then you go talk to them and you're like, what sort of savage demon was hiding behind this beautiful face? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? I've seen people. I've seen people who, like, I think I've reached a point where I can tell when a person is being moved by inner realm imagery that is not them. I can tell when consciousness is grounded or not. But I can tell it if I see the person's eyes. Because your eyes, if you automate, like, which, like, for example, work with the moderators, your eyes are going to be a bit zoned out. What that means is you're conscious that something is happening, but you're not conscious what's making it happen. And this is very important, that an ability to discriminate between their inner models of reality and their outer models. Because if you believe the inner models too much, you deviate from the outer reality, right? And this is why Islam was so advanced for me, because Islam was saying, buddy, stop thinking that your ego knows. Stop thinking that this, like, couple pound brain can figure all of it out. play your part, and as you play your part, you will begin to see the intentions of the system for you. So I reverted from being this complicated, sophisticated person with like spiritual backstories and whatever to be like, no, it's way more healthier and purer when I act like I don't know. Even if I know something, but when I tell myself, buddy, what you know is what you've considered so far. What what do you truly know? And I had a moment where I was like, I in my mind I just visualized like if somebody asked me something, even though I have so many references I can answer, but ultimate answer is I don't know. Why? Because the original force moving the system is unknown. We choose to languageify it. We choose to, give it terminology, but it doesn't mean language can replace reality. Anyways, thank you for listening. I believe that in the future, scientists are, it's going to become different. Pretty much what you're going to see happen is that human beings are activating themselves as concepts in accordance to specific contexts, but we're going to activate them more through a collective context. That means you're going to see like to be a scientist is like, it's like an attribute of humanity. To be a religious person, it's an attribute of the human species, and the core is the human species. So you got to keep that in mind. We're living for the greatness uh, of everything. It doesn't matter. That means for me, if I was stranded on an island and there was a scientist and there was a religious person, you know, I'd tell the religious person to, like, I don't know, um, I'd probably, do you understand? Based on the ability in the moment, the roles emerge, right? So I'm saying there's different roles. I'd probably like tell if I was stranded on an island and people like, I don't know, selected me as the manager of that moment, I'd be like, all right, religious person, you're gonna go into hunting, and you're gonna go into like cooking food. And then I'd look at the scientist and I'd be like, all right, you come and help me build a shelter for everybody, you know? So what I'm saying is it's like it's not that these two archetypes or different archetypes have to fight each other to be valid or have to attain their validity by making the other invalid. Everything is useful if you're smart enough. And I my vision is that an advanced species will make an advanced decision, and ultimately the main role is that the species is not a scientist, not a religious person, it's a strategist. We as human beings are trying to find the greatest strategies for the advancement of humanity and also the advancement of consciousness where it actually is and what it is in the presence of. It's like, have you ever thought you could be an ant instead of treating people like ants? You know what I mean? Anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this lecture was nice. Um, yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Auzubillah shaitan rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Ghfirli. My Lord, forgive me. My Lord, forgive us all for all the sins that we are conscious and unconscious of. Forgive the species. And finally, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the most advanced return us to the most advanced in the most advanced and best way. It's like you can't tap into species consciousness and just pray, for yourself. It's the species' victory is way more fascinating than just our own. It will be ours also. Anyways, thank you. Have a great day, guys.